Welcome to my Hebrew channel, Mielabraika. I'm looking at Ruth 4, verse 17. This is the last line of the last verse of narration in our story. Verse 18 and onwards to the end of the book of Ruth, we have genealogies. At this point, we're towards the end. Two very key names are mentioned in this particular passage right here. One of them is Obed, the name of the child that was born, and then David is mentioned right at the end. And then from there on, verse 18 onwards to the end of the book, we have genealogy. So at this point, it closes off our narration, our story here, and so it's a beautiful closing of our passage. So let's get on to the study here. Let's take a look at what we have here. And here we are in Ruth 4, verse 17. Verse 16 ends right here with le'omenet. Le'omenet. And then there's a siluk sof pasuk closing off verse 16. She was to him as a caregiver, as omenet. This is someone who trains in amen, trains in faithfulness, someone who's faithful and trains in faithfulness. And this was then the role of Naomi in terms of the child that was born. So we'll find out the name of the child very soon, but this was the role of Naomi. We're still dealing with many of the women here who are speaking, and these are the women of the city, and their role or the position is mentioned here in this particular noun. Okay, we'll call this a noun. And so starting verse 17, we'll start right here, right after the sof pasuk, and with the conjunction here. Va tikrana, prefixed form of kara, to call, to name, and na, and this is then the third person feminine suffix of this verb. And we've seen this kind of third person suffix endings in the first chapter. We would usually see it with the two Moabite women. But here we've already seen this third person feminine ending here. I tend to confuse it a little bit with na, the one who's asking, like na is the petition type na, but here it's tikrana, the ones they say, then they said, or they named him, okay? Tikra, call out or to name someone. Very much in parallel with right here, and so, if you're wondering of the antecedent of lo, to him, and then they called out or they named him, it's here, Tikrana Shemo Obed. So when you see the parallel structure here of these two verbs, it does help define quite a bit better, or quite a bit more precisely, what this particular first passage, or the first time we see this verb coming through here. So Tikrana, and then they named, or they called out to him, and then this now is the subject of our verse right here. Ha shokenet, the ones who are shakan, the ones who live. The way to remember this shakan is Shekinah. That's Jehovah lives, the habitation of Jehovah. So in a sense, very much a strong sense of ha-shekenot, the inhabitants. Now this is the inhabitants. Which inhabitants? Those are the women. It's a feminine plural here. Those are the women of the city. So here we have Shem. We have Shem here as well. What you have here is you have the verb, and then the things that receives the action of the verb, and then you have the women, and then what do they name? A name. Okay, Shem. Okay, so the women who then name, or the ones who name a name. So Betikrana lo shekonot, the inhabitants, the people who live in the city, the women who live in the city, it's feminine plural. Shem, a name. Lemor, saying. This introduces a subordinate clause here, saying, and then whatever comes after this is what they are saying. Yulad has been born. The kibbutz tells us is the reflexive sense of this yalad. We've seen this verb before, with Teled, with when she gives birth, that is when Ruth gives birth, we see it as Teled, and here's Yulad. This is reflexive then. He has been born, or there has been born. Again, now, Makef, and there's no accenting on this one, so the accenting of this particular verb has been passed on to the next part of the chain here, and has been born to us, has been born, Ben, a son, not to us, to Naomi, okay? Naomi. There has been born a son to Naomi. And Atna, right here, so this one's the logical division of our verse. And so we take a little break here as to having gone halfway through the verse with Atna. And then again, we see the very same verb, Vatekrana. In fact, actually the very same vowel pointing as well. And then they said, they named Shemo, his name, Obed. Now, Obed is the name, of course, of the boy that was born to Ruth and then placed in the bosom of Naomi. And Obed means servant. This can, in some circumstances, Obadim, or see it in the first chapters of Exodus, can mean slavery, but it also means servant. Okay, servant. We've seen forms of it already throughout our story in formal settings of, oh, I am your servant, and so Obed. But this is the name of this particular child that has been born. Obed, the servant. Hugh, and then he is the independent pronoun right here. Avi, and he is the father of Yisai, of Jesse, and that's the father of David. Okay, David. And this verse 17 ends simply with a siluk, doesn't bother with sof pasuk here. Now, printed textbooks, we're going to have that change. So, and the name of this particular child that was born is significant because, as we've seen throughout the whole story, Naomi's life had fallen apart and had come to pieces, and now it's being restored. And it's being restored by someone who's willing to work, someone who's willing to be of service. And so this particular, the meaning of this particular name is significant. In other words, when you want to bring things back and want to restore things, have somebody who is willing to be of service. And the name indicates, someone who is of service, or that's the servant one, the minister, the one who's caring for things. And so that becomes an important aspect of this particular story. So we bring to a conclusion then of the narration. From here on, the next verses, as I've said in the introduction, are genealogy, and they simply then establish genealogies in Hebrew are established to the place and position of who's involved. And it's interesting, we start with Phares and then end up with David. So it's just a portion of the genealogy we see over in the book of Matthew. But it's a very important piece of genealogy, and tells us the placing of Obed and Naomi and all these other people, places those people historically. The things that happen in life are historical events in real place with real people, and this is how we have to understand also what is happening here. This is a real person, Obed. He had a child then known as Yisai, and then Yisai he also fathered then David. So we here see Obed. He's then David's grandfather. So that's how we come to understand this particular individual. But as I said, for things to be restored, people have to be willing to be of service. And Obed, of course, the name means servant, worker, servant, and the one who's willing to restore things. He also has the title of Goel, of Redeemer, and so his work then is to redeem and restore the family that was lost through the passing of Elimelech and Mahlon, and so that has all been restored. And God is faithful, God cares for us, and God provides us with a family, with a people, and we are part of it, and we're part of the people of God, and for that we are very, very grateful. So may God bless and may God strengthen you in this day.